Morning, guys. So first, a quick shout out. I want to shout out two people, and those two people are Bradley and Emelise, because they have been on point with making sure that they're submitting classwork and or reaching out to me about their grades when they have any kind of questions. Guys, I'm super proud of you. Please keep it up all the way through the end. We only got a couple more weeks left of school, and next week we do have a social studies assembly, which will be exciting, and we will talk about that tomorrow. Today, though, we need to focus on our learning target for today. Today's lesson is a 2-day lesson. As instructed on the to-do list, you are only doing one row of today's graphic organizer. When we get to the direction stage of this video, I'll explain why you're not doing the entire chart today, mainly because it would be way too much. Before we go into our learning target, I need you to go back and do the RTL. So if you are someone who has not yet done the RTL, pause the video now, go back, do the RTL, and then come back so that you can make those connections between the RTL and the learning target. If you are someone who has done the RTL, then you are ready to continue watching this video. Excuse me, guys. So let's start with a quick conversation. So in that RTL, you were given a couple of scenarios for 1 and 2. If you were a fisherman, would you live in the desert? If you were a dairy farmer, would you move to New York City? And then that third question asked you, how can your environment, how can your location influence how you make money? What kind of jobs you had? And your classmates this morning had some amazing things to say. So Jameer pointed out that if you're going to farm, you're going to need open land. If you want to be a farmer, why are you moving to New York City? Most of us live in apartments. We literally live on top of each other. There is no open land over here. So why, if you were a farmer, would you move to a city? Because you're going to need access to open land. So your location is going to influence where you end up. Madison, Adama, a couple of people pointed out that you're going to need certain resources in order to do certain jobs. So for example, if you want to be a fisherman, well, you're gonna have to live near some kind of lake or a river or an ocean. If you're living out in the middle of the desert, you don't have the resources to be a fisherman because there are no fish and there's not a lot of water around. Somebody also pointed out, I believe it was Adama, that weather. I know Mark and I also had a conversation about this beyond head. Weather is really important. If you want to do certain jobs that involve farming or growing something, you're going to need the right weather to grow whatever it is you want to grow. You're going to need the right weather. So if you want to grow a crop like rice, which requires a lot of water, but you don't live in a place that has a lot of rain as part of its weather, well, you might not be super successful. Right? So in all these examples that your classmates came up with this morning, they pointed out that physical land and climate really affects what kind of jobs you do. Today, we're going to start thinking about the kind of jobs that people did back in the colonies. And we're specifically going to think about over the next 2 days how climate and how the land in the colonies affected the kind of jobs that people had. So with that, let's get to the learning target and really break down some of these terms. I will be able to explain how the physical land and climate of each colonial region affected the region's economy. So there's a couple of terms in here that we definitely need to be familiar with before moving on. Let's start with physical land. If we're thinking about the features of physical land, if I were to ask you what are some features of the physical land, you might come up with a variety of answers. Your classmates this morning came up with the following answers. Someone said, well, mountains, that's part of what the land physically looks like. Hamed made a great point. He said terrain is really important, and someone defined that. I forget who it was, but it was such a good definition. How the land feels. So if you're walking on the land, how does it feel? Is it rocky? Is it sandy? Does it feel smooth, someone said? Right? So the mountains are important, terrain. Another part of physical land, or another feature of physical land, might be rivers. Are there rivers? Are there lakes? So depending on where you live, the physical land might look different. We also need to pay attention to climate today, and climate can simply be defined as the weather. What kind of weather do you have? Another term which is new in here is colonial region. We're going to think about that term. We're going to read about that term in just a minute, / watch a video that really breaks it down. But we can break this term, colonial region, down into its parts. First, we've got region, which we defined this morning as an area. And then we looked at the word colonial. Colonial sounds like colony. Right? Colonial sounds like colony. We learned yesterday, we talked about that word yesterday. We said the colonies are the place that is taken over. If colonization is that process of taking over land, the colony is the physical place that gets taken over. We know that Europeans, as colonization is happening, Europeans are taking over lands in North and South America, and some Europeans are even choosing to move to these lands and stay in these colonies. Our job today is to figure out how did the physical land, how did the climate, the weather, affect each colonial, I'm sorry guys, let me back up. Our job today is to figure out how the physical land and how the climate in these colonies, how it affected their economy. And we talked about this word yesterday. We said when we think of the word economy or economic, our minds should go to jobs, money. Someone this morning, I think it was Hamad, said trade. Jobs, money, and trade. So how did physical land in the colonies, how did the physical land of the colonies, how did the climate, the weather of the colonies, how did that affect the kind of jobs people could have back during the time of the colonies? So let's get into our main activity now. But before we actually do that, we're going to watch a quick video that gives us an overview, a visual of what the colonies looked like, what they were like back during this time period of colonization that we are studying. So I'm going to share my screen. And before we move on, we're actually going to read out this quick little text. It's called Intro to the Three Colonial Regions. A colony is a place that's settled by a group of people outside their home country. During the 1600s, people from England and other countries in Europe started moving to colonies set up in what is today the east coast of the United States. By the 1700s, England had set up 13 colonies along the east coast. Here are the 13 colonies. The British colonies, the English colonies, can be divided into three groups: the New England colonies, the Middle colonies, and the Southern colonies. Each group of colonies had a different climate and culture. We call each of these groups a colonial region. A region, an area that has a similar culture or similar characteristics. So we can see from this map, we've got three colonial regions. We've got those New England colonies in yellow, the middle colonies in pink, and the southern colonies in blue. Let's watch a quick video to learn a little bit about what life was like in each region. In each colonial region. Guys, I see lag. Okay, guys, I'm sorry for the awkward pause, but it seems like the video is way too laggy to record over Zoom. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just before you continue watching this video, go back and watch in step 2 where it says watch this video. Just go back and re-watch the song before continuing with this video. The rest of this video will focus on what you do for today. We'll focus on the instructions. So if you scroll to the second page of your packet, you'll see that you have directions written at the top. Directions. The climate and landscape of the 3 colonial regions was very different. For example, in the South, it stays hot all year long. Use the chart below to get information about each region's climate and landscape. Landscape means the physical characteristics of the land. For example, does the land have mountains, good soil, rocky soil, hills? In this activity, you will figure out how the physical land and climate of the different regions influence the types of jobs people had in the New England, Middle, and Southern colonies. Using the graphs on the following pages and the chart below to complete your Geography and Economies of Colonial Regions graphic organizer. So the graphic organizer is below. The graphic organizer is below. In order to fill in the graphic organizer, you're going to need this chart. This chart tells us what the physical land looked like in different areas, the different areas discussed in the video, as well as what the climate was like. You probably realized from the video that we live in what was the Middle Colonies. If you are from the South or you've been to the South, you might be familiar with what the weather is like and what the land looks like in the South. But if you're not, this chart does give you the information that you need. So using this chart, you're going to answer question number 1 in your graphic. What features of this region's land and climate seem most important to you? Why? Explain in 1 to 2 sentences. The second and third questions are answered based on the graphs available to you. So if you scroll down, you'll see that you have graphs for each colonial region. So there's a graph for those who are studying the New England region. There's a graph, sorry guys. There's a graph for those of you studying the Middle Colonies. And there's a graph for those of you studying the Southern Colonies region. Your job is to use the graphs to answer question number 2 and 3. According to your graphs, what types of products did people sell in this region? According to your graphs, what types of products did people in this region make and sell? That's question number 2. And number 3, how could the land and climate in this region have influenced what people made and sold? You are jigsawing. So today you need to pick one colonial region to study. So this person, this is from a breakout room earlier, but let's say that this person picks the Middle Colonies. If you pick the Middle Colonies, you are filling in this entire row for the Middle Colonies, and that is it for today. Tomorrow you will be placed in a group, in a breakout room, with someone from the Southern Colonies and the New England Colonies. The person who studied the New England Colonies today will help you fill in that row of your graphic organizer. The person who studied the Southern Colonies will fill you in on the information you need to complete the Southern Colonies row of your graphic organizer. If you're in a group of 3, each member is only responsible for one colonial region. So you today are responsible for one colonial region. By the end of tomorrow, this entire chart needs to be filled out.